And what
No.
happened?
Um, what happened was not cute. Yeah, there was drama.
From who?
One of them.
Oh.
One of the actors.
Mm-hmm.
They were TV's best friends. But behind the scenes, the truth was far darker. The Facts of Life was set to make its big TV comeback when one actress secretly tried to get rich, without the others. The betrayal was so intense, it shattered their bond forever. For months, they didn't speak. Even TV legend Norman Lear couldn't patch things up before he passed. Fans would be stunned to find out which beloved star ended their friendship, and it's someone no one ever expected. In 1979, NBC was in deep trouble. Among the three major networks, it was dead last in ratings. There was only one bright spot, Little House on the Prairie. But the rest, complete flops, none more catastrophic than Supertrain. The show tried to be a glamorous love boat on rails, but it turned into a total disaster. NBC poured millions into it, but all they had to show for it was failure. The network was desperate. Among the few shows still hanging on was DeFron's Strokes. It wasn't a smash hit, but it had its fans, mainly because of Gary Coleman. Fred Silverman, NBC's boss at the time, knew that anything even slightly successful had to be capitalized on. Silverman had previously turned around CBS and ABC, and now he was determined to save NBC. So, he took a big gamble. In the summer of 1979, NBC launched The Facts of Life, a spin-off of DeFron's Strokes. At first, no one cared. Out of 79 shows that summer, it ranked a miserable 74th. It seemed like just another failure in the making. But then, something unexpected happened. By the second season, the show began to gain momentum. By season 3, The Facts of Life became NBC's top comedy. A lot of that success can be traced back to one woman, Charlotte Rae. She played Edna Garrett, the wise and warm housekeeper from DeFron's Strokes. But Rae wasn't just an actress, she was a seasoned character actress, known for bringing depth and strength to her roles. Having been in the business for years, Rae had a vision. What if her character had her own show? She pitched the idea to NBC, focusing on a girls' school setting. But, just in case the spin-off flopped, she made sure she could return to DeFron's Strokes to keep her career safe. It was a move that proved both savvy and strategic. Fred Silverman, who had greenlit the spin-off, had taken a leap of faith before DeFron's Strokes even finished its first season. This kind of decision was unheard of at the time, but Silverman didn't play by the rules. He trusted his instincts. Having already turned around other networks, he was determined to make NBC a powerhouse. And he knew that Norman Lear, the iconic producer behind DeFron's Strokes, was a fan of Charlotte Rae's work. Charlotte Rae had already appeared in some of Norman Lear's other shows. But when NBC needed a game changer, Fred Silverman didn't hesitate. He quickly hired Rae to play the housekeeper, and then he took a bold leap. Even before seeing how the audience would respond to the character, Silverman gave Rae her own show. This was all part of his bigger plan to rebuild NBC's lineup, a plan that would eventually bring hits like Hill Street Blues, St. Elsewhere, and Cheers to the network. But everything began with The Facts of Life. In 1979, Rae was preparing for the spin-off and decided to visit the Westlake School for Girls in Bel Air to do some research. She wasn't scouting talent, she just wanted to get a feel for the environment. But then, something unexpected happened. A 13-year-old student named Mindy Cohn was assigned to show Rae and producer Norman Lear around. Mindy wasn't an actress, she was just being herself, funny, charming, and completely unfiltered. And that was more than enough. Rae and Lear were so taken by Mindy's personality that they created a role just for her. They named the character Natalie Green, and Mindy landed the part without even auditioning. Suddenly, she was on a hit TV show while still juggling her schoolwork like it was just another day. To her parents, it was no different than joining the tennis team. But at the same time, a young girl named Kim Fields was about to audition for the role of a lifetime, one she almost skipped. Kim, only 9 years old, walked into the audition room and saw older girls who looked like they belonged on magazine covers. She wanted to turn around and leave, but her mom stopped her. In a quick bathroom pep talk, she told Kim not to let anyone, not even her own fears, hold her back. That talk worked. Kim landed the role of Tootie, even though she was supposed to play a 12-year-old. The only problem, she was tiny. The producers had to get creative. To make her appear taller next to the other girls, they put her on roller skates. The solution worked so well that it became a signature part of Tootie's character, turning into one of the show's most iconic visual quirks. Meanwhile, Molly Ringwald, just 11 years old, was also part of the show's early days. She played a socially aware girl named Molly Parker, who carried a guitar and always spoke her mind. She was one of the original 7 girls, but the first season was a disaster. The network decided the cast was too big and the writing was flat. Molly, along with most of the original cast, was let go. It was a painful experience for her, and she later described being dropped as humiliating. But this setback wouldn't last long. Just a few years later, Molly became one of Hollywood's biggest teen stars, headlining 16 Candles, The Breakfast Club, and Pretty in Pink. When The Facts of Life started in 1979, it was a mess. The cast was too large, the writing was lackluster, and the audience wasn't tuning in. NBC was ready to pull the plug after just 1 season, but one executive refused to give up on it. Brandon Tartikoff, a rising star at NBC, saw something in the show that others didn't. He fought hard to keep it alive, even when Norman Lear, who had helped create the show, wanted nothing to do with it. Lear, unimpressed with the early version, asked for his name to be removed from the credits. But in the end, Lear still made around $30 million from the show, despite his early disappointment. The show Norman Lear didn't even want became a goldmine. Season 2 was a game changer. The first major change: they cut the cast. The original version featured 7 girls, but suddenly, almost half were gone. No big goodbyes, no grand farewell episodes, just a sharper focus on 3 core characters: Blair, Natalie, and Tootie. One of the girls who was dropped, a young Molly Ringwald, just before she skyrocketed to fame as a movie star. It was a risky move, and viewers were confused. Blair, who had once looked down on the younger girls, now acted like they'd always been best friends. Despite the awkward transition, the more focused cast brought a clearer direction to the show. It stopped feeling like a jumble and started to resemble a real series. And then came Jo. Enter Nancy McKeon as Jo Polniacek, a tough girl from the Bronx, sporting a leather jacket and riding a motorcycle. Her first scene, covered in grease, arguing with Blair. That initial spark between them changed everything. Critics were unsure at first. McKeon was rough around the edges, but fans quickly connected with her. Jo brought a new bite to the show. She made it feel real. But behind the scenes, things weren't always as fun as they seemed. McKeon later admitted that growing up on the show wasn't easy. The cast, mostly teenagers, was under constant pressure about their weight and appearance. As McKeon later said, "You're filming someone's puberty." The spotlight wasn't always kind. The show also moved locations. No longer just set in the dorms, the girls now worked in the school cafeteria under Mrs. Garrett, who had become the school's dietitian. The change gave the writers more freedom, and the setting felt less like a sleepover and more like a real working environment. That's when the show took off. The retooling worked. It wasn't just about school uniforms and food fights anymore. It tackled real issues like racism, drugs, eating disorders, and even suicide. And it didn't sugarcoat any of it. One bold episode about teen sex even had Lisa Whelchel, who played Blair, asking to sit it out due to her religious beliefs. NBC aired it with a parental warning, and it still landed in the top 25 that week. The theme song became iconic. The catchy line, "You take the good, you take the bad," written by Alan Thicke, Gloria Loring, and Al Burton, became a staple. Loring sang it, and although the song evolved a bit over the years, people never stopped singing along. Looking back, it's almost unbelievable how close The Facts of Life came to being another forgotten show. But with a few bold decisions, it turned itself around. New cast, new setting, new energy. What started as a mess became one of the longest-running sitcoms of the 80s. And all it took was a second chance and a little fight to get there. Behind the scenes, however, things were far from perfect. When Mindy Cohn returned to the set after a summer break, she looked different. She had become more active, and her metabolism had changed. Like many teenagers, her body naturally slimmed down. But instead of congratulating her for being healthy, the producers pulled her aside and asked what had happened. They were upset. They told her she needed to gain the weight back. Mindy was stunned. Her character, Natalie, was never officially labeled as the fat girl, but apparently, that's how the producers saw her. They wanted her to stay that way. Mindy's mom wasn't having it. She stepped in and told the producers to visit a real high school and see what girls at that age actually looked like. Mindy refused to gain the weight back, so the costume department came up with a new plan. They started dressing her in oversized clothes, attempting to make her look heavier on camera. It was all about appearance, and no one seemed to care how damaging it could be for a teenage girl growing up under that kind of pressure. Things didn't improve when the cameras stopped rolling. Joan Rivers, one of the most famous comedians in the world at the time, began using the facts of life as a punchline in her routines. She called it the facts of life, and the joke stuck. Even though the internet didn't exist back then, word spread quickly. The girls on the show heard it. They saw it on TV. Lisa Whelchel, who played Blair, said they knew exactly what Joan Rivers meant. Mindy recalled how Rivers made the joke a regular bit, asking her audience if they'd seen the latest episode of The Facts of Life. People laughed, and the girls just had to endure it. They never talked about it on set. They were all exhausted by the weight-related conversations, but that didn't make them go away. Lisa, on the other hand, dealt with a different kind of humiliation. The producers put a scale on set and insisted she weigh herself, sometimes right in front of them. It became part of her routine. During the show's hiatus, when Lisa thought she could get a break, they sent her to weight loss camps instead. She'd say she was going home to Texas, but they handed her a plane ticket to a so-called fat farm. She was just 16, and her parents were going through a divorce. Her body was changing, and instead of support, she received constant judgment. One day, the craft table swapped out donuts and cookies for celery sticks and carrots. It wasn't always outright cruel, but it was always there, the unspoken message that her body wasn't good enough. The pressure wasn't just physical. It left scars, ones they carried for years. Nancy McKeon, who joined the show at just 14, looked back and reflected on what it meant to grow up on camera. From puberty to adulthood, every moment was recorded, watched, and judged. Psychologists say adolescence is one of the most fragile stages for body image, and being under the spotlight only makes it worse. Lisa described it as a daily battle, where you couldn't escape the feeling of being constantly observed, always measured. That kind of pressure changes how a young person sees themselves. It creates a mental loop where you're always checking, always worrying. You stop focusing on who you are and start obsessing over how you look. Lisa Whelchel was just a teenager when she landed the role of Blair Warner on The Facts of Life. The show was a massive hit, and Blair quickly became one of the most beloved characters. But behind the scenes, Lisa faced a tough decision early on. The producers had big plans for Blair. They wanted her to be the first character to lose her virginity on the show. Lisa, however, wasn't on board with it. Having been a Christian since she was 10, Lisa's faith played a huge role in her life. When the producers pitched the storyline, she didn't hesitate. She firmly told them, "That's not something I can be a part of." It wasn't just a matter of personal belief. She also felt a responsibility to the young viewers who looked up to her. Lisa didn't believe such a serious topic could be handled appropriately in a single episode, squeezed between commercial breaks. She wasn't willing to take that risk. Turning down a major storyline like that, especially on a popular show, could have been career-ending for many young actors. But Lisa stood her ground. To her surprise, the producers respected her decision. She later said they were always supportive of her beliefs, a rarity in Hollywood. The idea didn't disappear. Instead, it simmered in the background. The writers brought it back in the final season. This time, however, the story didn't go to Blair. It was given to Natalie, played by Mindy Cohn. Unlike Lisa, Mindy didn't have a problem with it. When producers approached her, Mindy simply replied, "Hey, I'll do it." So in 1988, near the show's end, the episode finally aired. Natalie, now 21, loses her virginity to her boyfriend, Snape. They'd been in a serious relationship for a year, and the show framed it as a mature decision between two adults. It was a significant moment. A show that had avoided talking about sex for nearly a decade was finally going there, with characters who were well into their 20s. Some viewers found that ironic. After all, the show was called The Facts of Life. But for most of its run, it had skirted around one of the biggest facts of all. One critic joked that the show didn't live up to its name, since no one had sex until the final season, and by then, the characters were all adults. When the episode aired, NBC treated it differently from other sitcoms. They began with a parental advisory, warning viewers that the subject matter might not be suitable for children. That kind of caution was rare for a comedy, but even with the warning, the episode performed well in the ratings. It landed in 22nd place that week, impressive for such a delicate topic. The reactions were mixed. Some praised how the show handled the subject, honestly and thoughtfully, while others felt the characters' reactions were problematic. Some viewers thought the girls quietly judged Natalie, even shaming her, which didn't sit well with many. For older audiences, the episode felt like an honest, thoughtful conversation. For younger viewers, it seemed outdated and even a little preachy. Then came 2001, and plans for a Facts of Life reunion movie started to take shape. Most of the cast agreed to return, but Nancy McKeon didn't. Officially, it was a scheduling issue, as she was filming The Division. But there was more to the story. She had jokingly suggested in early talks that if they brought Jo back, it should be as a ghost, a la The Big Chill. That joke somehow stuck, and Joe wasn't included in the reunion film. Still, production moved forward, just as the world was changing. Filming began right before September 11th and continued through that tragic moment in history. The reunion special told the story of the girls meeting up for Thanksgiving. Blair was now running a hotel empire. Tootie, now Dorothy, was a talk show host. And Natalie brought them all together. Though Joe didn't appear, her daughter did. Strangely, the cast had once promised each other they would never do a reunion film, but time, and circumstances, had changed. Most of them said yes. Years later, in 2019, the four original stars reunited on screen once again. This time, it was for a holiday movie, You Light Up My Christmas, produced by none other than Kim Fields. She called the women her sisters and made sure they were involved in choosing their costumes and character names. The movie was full of little nods to fans of the original Facts of Life, and in a touching tribute, they named the town's ice skating rink after Charlotte Rae, who had passed away the year before. It was a sweet gesture, and fans appreciated it. One fan even called it light-hearted and fun, giving it a nearly perfect review online. Then, in December 2021, something unexpected happened. ABC aired a live special where celebrities reenacted old sitcoms. One of the shows featured was The Facts of Life, alongside Different Strokes. Viewers loved it, millions tuned in, and critics showered it with praise. During a panel after the special, celebrities like Octavia Spencer, Amy Poehler, and Jennifer Aniston all said The Facts of Life was their favorite. That moment changed everything. Norman Lear, the legendary producer behind the show, was watching. Even in his late 90s, he was surprised. He hadn't realized how much people still cared about the show. So he did something unexpected. He called the four original stars, Mindy Cohn, Lisa Whelchel, Kim Fields, and Nancy McKeon, and asked if they'd be interested in bringing the show back. It was 2022, and the world was still dealing with the pandemic. Everyone was stuck at home, but the idea of a reboot sparked excitement. The four women began talking seriously. They met on Zoom, laughing, brainstorming, and reconnecting after years apart. They even hired a writer to help shape the reboot. Norman Lear joined in, too. Despite his age, he gave notes, shared ideas, and helped guide the process. For the first time in decades, the original cast was working together again, dreaming up a modern version of their old show. It felt good. It felt real. Then, everything fell apart. The cast, who had stayed close for decades, suddenly stopped talking. Mindy Cohn opened up about it in a July 2024 interview. She revealed that one of the cast members had gone behind everyone's back, secretly trying to secure her own spin-off. That betrayal caused a wave of emotions, breaking apart a 40-year friendship. Until that moment, their bond had been drama-free since the show ended in 1988, something almost unheard of in Hollywood. But after the betrayal, everything changed. For months, they didn't speak at all. When they finally did, it was awkward and shallow. Cohn described it as "we do-ish," meaning their conversations were polite but distant. It wasn't real friendship anymore, just surface-level contact. The timing made it even more painful. During the pandemic, they'd been working closely on Zoom, building the revival together. They were brainstorming ideas, shaping the storyline, all with Norman Lear's blessing. Lear even tried to smooth things over before he passed away in December 2023, but nothing worked. The damage was done. By the time Cohn gave her interview, she made it clear. The trust was gone, and it wasn't coming back. She said there was no desire to ever work together again. That might not sound shocking for most celebrity groups, but for this one, it was devastating. For years, they'd stood together, taking the all-for-one, one-for-all approach seriously. They protected each other's reputations, stuck to joint decisions, and avoided drama. It wasn't just personal, there were real plans underway for the revival. A writer had already been hired. But when one of them chose money over friendship, everything unraveled. Cohn couldn't believe someone would throw away such deep, loyal relationships for a chance at solo fame. Fans felt the same way. They had always loved that The Facts of Life had no scandal behind the scenes. That clean image was part of what made the show special. Then, in February 2024, something curious happened. Lisa Whelchel, Nancy McKeon, and Mindy Cohn all appeared on the Drew Barrymore show together. They surprised Drew for her birthday and gave her a gift bag that only people on the Facts of Life set used to receive. It was a warm, emotional moment. They talked about the old days, shared stories, and honored Charlotte Rae, who played Mrs. Garrett. Drew even teared up, saying the show helped shape how she understood friendship and independence while growing up. But when fans looked back on the moment months later, they noticed something strange. Kim Fields wasn't there. That absence raised eyebrows. People started wondering whether she had been left out, or if she had chosen not to join. And what did that mean for the current dynamics within the cast? Soon, online detectives took over. After Cohn hinted that fans could guess who the betrayer was based on her current friendships, people started scouring her Instagram. What they found fueled even more speculation. Cohn had recent pictures with Fields and McKeon, but none with Welchel. That seemed like a big clue. Still, not everyone agreed. Some pointed out that Fields was missing from the Drew Barrymore reunion, which made her a possible suspect. Others recalled how Cohn had always described her character as closest to Joe, McKeon, and Tootie, Fields, suggesting that Welchel might be the odd one out. Fans and forums began comparing real-life behavior with the characters from the show. Some said Welchel's actions reminded him of Blair, ambitious, self-focused, and always seeking the spotlight. By late July, the internet had mostly made up its mind. Articles popped up naming Welchel as the one who had gone behind everyone's back. There was no official confirmation, but in the court of public opinion, the verdict was in. What started as excitement for a long-awaited reunion ended in heartbreak, confusion, and the fandom caught in the middle. For now, the bonds that once held the cast together seemed broken for good.